Man, this is Resurrection Sunday. This is Easter. There's no other day in the year like this day. You know, Easter is both the foundation and the pinnacle of our faith. Jesus in our past, Jesus in our present, and Jesus in our future is possible because of the resurrection of Jesus that we celebrate today, 2023, Easter Sunday. You know, we've been going through our series, Easter series, and we talked about, being forgiven by Jesus, looking for, today we're talking about, I forgot what the other sermons were, but today we're talking about looking for Jesus, looking for Jesus. Have you ever had something of value and you lost it? You know, maybe it's something that was very, very precious to you. Something, an heirloom. Maybe a piece of jewelry, maybe a ring, maybe a dish, maybe a trophy, maybe something that no one else has, but was given to you and is special to you. And you lost it. I mean, you really lost it. And you looked and you looked and looked for it and you couldn't find it, but finally, have you ever had something that was really valuable to you and so precious to you, and you looked for it long enough and hard enough, and then you found it? You know, how wonderful was that? But also, have you had something that was very valuable to you and very precious to you? So precious. But no matter how hard you looked, no matter how long you looked, you never, ever found it again. I had something that was very precious to me that I lost not too long ago. My mother, just before she passed away, gave me a picture of me as an infant. Just a little guy. And Mom was holding me. I'd never seen the picture before. Mom had never shared it with me. I didn't even know it existed until she gave it to me. It was a picture of my mother, Jackie Boyd, and she's holding me on her right shoulder. And her back is to the camera. She's looking this way, but I'm looking back towards the camera, just almost looking right at the camera. Black and white, just so you know, it's way back there. And the picture. And she gave it to me, and I valued it so much, and I took it and I placed it on a piano stool that we'd got from my parents' home. But then we moved. And I lost it. And we looked for it, and we looked for it, and we looked for it, but we haven't been able to find it. But you know, when I saw that picture, I thought two things that came to mind. I thought, one, wow, here I am, and I know that's me, and I can tell that's me, but I don't remember this moment. But here's Mom holding me, and I know she loves me. And the second thing I thought, I said, man, I had a big head. I looked like Charlie Brown. I said, it's like a pumpkin head. I said, where did I get that head from? And I said, well, Mom must have loved me because that was a head only a mother can love. And so that picture was so special, but we moved. And I lost it. And we've looked for it and all around, and we just, that was the most precious thing my mother gave me before she passed this earth. You know, and that Easter morning, there was something that was very precious. That Easter, something that was very precious was lost. You know, on that Good Friday, Mary lost her son. On that Good Friday before, the disciples lost their leader, the one who had been teaching them and been loving them and training them these 3 long years. On Good Friday, those who were close to Jesus lost a friend who had been such an encouragement to them. On that Good Friday, Jerusalem, the Israelites lost hope because Jesus was the one who was to come to deliver them. On that Good Friday, the world lost the Messiah, the Son of God who was to come and to give his life for the world. And so the world began looking for Jesus. And see, that's the reason why we should consider looking for Jesus. Because when we find Jesus, we find the life that we have been created to live. I want you to hear that. When we find Jesus, it is in finding Jesus that we find the life that we have been created to live. And on that Easter morning, there were two women, Mary Magdalene and other Mary. They were stumbling through the darkness to find the Jesus that they had lost. And we read these words in Matthew 28, verse 1. After the Sabbath, at dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and going to the tomb rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified." You know, on that Easter morning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were going to the tomb. They to look at the tomb. And they were looking for Jesus, but they were only looking for the body of Jesus. They were not looking for the living, breathing Jesus who had fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish. They were not looking for the living Jesus who walked on the waters to his disciples who were scared to death, hidden, cowering in the bottom of their boat. They were not looking for the living Jesus who called into the tomb of Lazarus and said, "Lazarus, come forth," and Lazarus came forth. They were not looking for the living, breathing, life-changing, world-changing Son of the living God who came to give his life so that we could find life. They were looking for the dead, stone-cold tomb body of a lifeless Jesus. It's the same kind of Jesus some people are still looking for today, believe it or not. You know, there are some people who are looking for the historical Jesus. I don't know if you ever heard that terminology, the historical Jesus. And they use what is called the critical historical method to piece together what we could understand in history from Jesus about what he said and how he lived and who he was. And they use all kinds of different sources, but not so much the Bible. And the strange thing is, each of them comes up with a different historical Jesus that is different than the Jesus that we have in the Bible. They're looking for the Jesus in past history, not for the Jesus of our future eternity. They're looking for a historical Jesus. But other people are looking for a philosophical Jesus. Jesus the philosopher, because he taught as a lot of the philosophers taught back in Rome at that time. And his sayings were very intriguing. And he would tell stories, we call them parables, to help us understand life and how it all fits together. And he was a great teacher, and they said, well, he was a philosopher, and if we just follow his teachings, we will have a wonderful, a great life. Just follow the philosophy of Jesus. And some people today are still looking for the historical Jesus, the philosophical Jesus. Jesus. And early on that Easter morning, Mary Magdalene and other Mary were looking for the body of Jesus. But they were faced with a crisis of belief about the possibility of a resurrected Jesus. The angel said to them, He is not here, He is risen. Just said, Come and see the place where He lay. Then go quickly and tell His disciples, He has risen from the dead, and He is going on ahead of you into Galilee, and there you will see Him. Now I have told you. Before, see, they had initially gone to the tomb to look at the tomb. But now they had the opportunity to look into the tomb. And in looking into the tomb, to see that the tomb was empty. And then they received the reason why. The angel said, Hey, He's not here because He is risen from the dead. Just as He said. And in case they didn't hear it the first time because of all the stuff that was going on, He told them the second time, He has risen from the dead, is going ahead of you into Galilee. This put Mary Magdalene and Mary in a very difficult, calls them to have a crisis of belief. Did they really believe Jesus said to them earlier, that He would have to die, be crucified, and on the third day be raised from the dead? Did they believe what the angel was telling them right now? That He is not here. He has risen just as He said. Could they believe? Would they believe? Are their minds able to wrap their minds around the reality that Jesus is resurrected? And it was a huge crisis of belief in this moment as they stood there at the tomb. You know, a few years back, Carol and I had a huge crisis of belief. My father had recently died. And my mom had asked me to do the funeral because I'm the minister in the family, and so I was honored to do my father's funeral, and it was hard. Man, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I got through it, and it went well, and Mom was pleased. Well, we came back, as in Huntsville, Alabama, we came back home, and a couple weeks later, I walk up the stairs to our bedroom, and Carol is up. She was a medical transcriptionist at the time, upstairs typing. But as I walked in the door, I could sense that she was crying. She was weeping. And I don't know how, but somehow I knew why she was weeping. And I started crying too. And as I stood there, she asked God, "Do you believe Dad is in heaven?" And it was the same thing that I had been wrestling with. Do I believe everything that I have been preaching all these years was true? Do I believe what I have said at every funeral service that I have led, that it was true? And maybe you've had this crisis of belief, and I'm just being very transparent with you here. Maybe you've had this crisis of belief that you've lost a loved one, someone that was close to you. And maybe you were too scared to ask this question of someone else, but you were brave enough to ask yourself the question, do I really believe today that they are in heaven? Or maybe even beyond that, maybe you are asking yourself this question in your life. Do I really believe what Jesus said? And do I really believe if I follow Him and have faith in Him, that one day when I fall asleep for the final time, do I really believe that I open my eyes and I will wake up in heaven? We were having a crisis of belief. Do we believe what Jesus had said? Do we believe what the angel was saying? He is not here. He is risen just as he said. And I think each one of us comes to that point in our time in our lives where we have this crisis of belief, and we have to really lean in to determine what is true for us and how we will live our lives based upon that. And the fact that Carol and I pray to Jesus for guidance says we believe. The fact that when life gets hard for us, Carol and I pray to Jesus for help says that we believe. The fact that the community of faith here gathered this morning in the Temple Baptist Church of Champaign, Illinois in 2023 says that we believe. And the fact that I'm standing here before you again one more time to tell you about the resurrected Christ who gave us life and rose from the grave and is waiting to welcome us home says that I believe absolutely. Do you believe? He is not here. He is risen just as he said. And early that morning, Mary Magdalene, the other Mary, went to look for the body of Jesus. But when they got there, they had a crisis of belief about the resurrected Jesus. But then they turned and ran. And in running, they met Jesus. So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly, Jesus met them. Hear those words. Suddenly, Jesus met them. Greetings, he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and they worshiped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me." Notice, they were filled with joy and yet afraid. These are two emotions on the opposite ends of the human spectrum of emotions. You know, afraid calls us to run, fear calls us to run, joy calls us to explode with glee. So here they're running because they're afraid of what the angel has told them, but yet they are filled with joy because of the possibilities of what the angel told them was absolutely true. And in their running, Jesus met them. And they're looking for Jesus. Jesus met them. And their fear and their joy, Jesus met them. And this is a truth that is true for all humanity. That when you look for Jesus, Jesus will come looking for you. He absolutely, positively will. If you look for Jesus, he will come looking for you. You know, and I'm still looking for that baby picture of mine. You know, not 24/7 or 365. But I'm looking for that picture, believing if I look long enough and if I look hard enough, one day I will find that picture. And you know what? When I do find that picture, I will bring that picture and I will put it on the big screen. And you'll see how my head will fill up the whole entire screen. But it will be such an amazing moment. And like the women that went to that tomb this morning, maybe you have been looking for Jesus. And maybe this morning you have found Jesus. And there's something inside you that is stirred, that is different now. And it's kind of a hunger, a kind of a drawing, a pull. And it's begun to change you. And it's begun to make you different. And the Jesus you have been looking for has met you today. And you want to give your life to Him. You want to follow Him. You want to worship Him. And you begin that journey. You begin that journey with the first step and you say, Jesus, I confess the sins of my past. I receive your forgiveness in my present to live my life for you in my future. I confess the sins of my past. I receive your forgiveness in my present to live my life for you in my future. And you see, that is what Easter is all about. It begins with just a little bit of faith. Like the faith of the women who that morning went to the tomb just to look at the tomb. They had enough faith to then look inside the tomb and realize it was empty. And maybe this morning you've looked inside the tomb and seen that it's empty. Just enough faith to come to worship Jesus, the resurrected Christ, here at the Temple Baptist Church on Easter morning. Just enough faith to have a crisis of belief, a moment, and say, maybe it's true, maybe it's possible, maybe Jesus did come give His life for me, and maybe He is resurrected from the dead, and maybe He's in heaven waiting for me, maybe it's true. And the pull is causing you to want to worship, to bow down. And the Bible says that at that moment of time, the women, when Jesus met them, they fell down to the ground and they grabbed a hold of His feet, and it says that they worshiped Him. And Christians all around the world this morning are doing exactly the same thing, because the reality of life is that we're free forever, amen. When death was arrested, it's then at that moment that our lives began.